but work. An alignment of our wiring in service of our communities. That is where peace is found. And we are back. Ooh, Danny boy, Danny boy, Danny boy. Chumbawamba, no explanation. Today's reflection is on, it's really all about finding yourself, your nature, in nature. The four aims within the Vedantic philosophy in life. First is Dharma. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The bookends. First one is Dharma, which can be translated as the aim towards righteousness or towards nature, law. Dharma means so many different things when you try to translate it into English. In English, we cut these all up. Gravity is not part of truth. Truth is separate from nature. But the Vedantic lens, it's beautifully, powerfully all one thing. Nature, truth, law, righteousness. It's like the DNA of how everything works and what everything is. You can't really break free from it like, the body's DNA. It can't just break free from it and start implementing someone else's DNA partial way through the job. It's the building blocks on which everything else is built, which is not exactly correct based on what people are finding with bioelectricity. But as an example, Dharma it's the foundational polyfractal in which all of this rests. All of this experience that you call the universe, or you as an individual. That's the first aim. Before you get towards an aim with your career or an aim towards pleasure or comfort, first aim is Dharma. It's kind of to know the game before you start trying to win the game. The last aim is liberation. To transcend the game. Work to know the game. Then sure, go out and try to win the game. But in the end, try to transcend the game. That's what moksha means, is liberation, enlightenment. But in this first bucket, this first aim of Dharma, of understanding the game, and understanding your role within the game, there is this essential concept of Swadharma, which is your nature. Knowing what you're wired for. What is the role in the world that you are wired for? You might have Swadharma for music, for painting, for business, for philosophy, for mathematics. That is your nature. But Swadharma is actually a combination of two words. And this was actually, we talked about this on a Yoga for Your Intellect episode, which is the longer form conversational podcast that I host with my teacher, Joseph, maybe 2 or 3 weeks back, where if you really dissect this concept that people love diving into the concept of Swadharma, what is your Swadharma? And that's because so many of us are lost in what our role is in society, in our communities. Because, we genuinely are lost because the world has been telling us to get a career, and career is a 20th century convention. A career of working at AT&T for 30 years. That is a made-up convention from companies like AT&T that want people to stay in a task, do that repetitive thing at the car manufacturing plant for the benefits and the pension in Detroit until the car manufacturing plant doesn't exist anymore. And everybody's like, wait, but I thought that was That was it. That was the place. That was my role. And with how quickly, I read a stat that millennials are shifting careers on average every 2 years right now. Not shifting jobs. Shifting careers every 2 years. And with the extreme rapidity in which we are switching careers, trying to find what we're wired for when it comes to our work. Don't get me wrong. Careers are a 20th century convention of like, okay, you're going to be a book editor. But work has been there since the beginning of time. Work was in the Garden of Eden before the fall of man. Symbolic story of paradise. We worked. There is only peace in action. I think Aristotle said, happiness is a being at work in accordance with virtue. We are wired for work. Careers, working 10 years, 20 years, 30 years as a product manager at Google, that might be a convention, but work, an alignment of our wiring in service of our communities, that is where peace is found. That's been here way before the concept of careers were ever uttered. But that term, Swadharma, your nature, what you're wired for, a combination of Swabhava and Dharma, your essential nature and righteousness itself. That is our role. That's where you go from feeling lost to feeling found. You fall into, surrender into your essential nature and your duty. In the 18th chapter of the Gita, there's an amazing articulation around surrendering into your duty. Surrender to a duty-bound existence, and immediate peace follows. This concept of surrendering to a duty-bound existence and immediate peace follows. I mentioned it in an episode a few days ago. And that is the backdrop, the background of finding yourself, finding your role within your community. Surrendering to duty. The Gita's 35-minute, 30-minute conversation of this warrior prince trying to get out of his duty. And his charioteer, his advisor, the symbolic embodiment of God, guiding him and telling him, you have no idea the agitation that you will sign yourself up for if you abdicate your responsibility and your duty. The thing you are wired for, which is to go into this war as the exceptionally well-trained warrior you are. And we are all at the precipice of a battle. When we are lost, we're at the precipice of a battle. Maybe we're right in the middle of it and we're trying to avoid it. Doing everything we can to justify it, to take the spiritual bypass, to get out of it. And that's why we feel lost. It's not where we are. It's not even what we're doing. It's our relationship to what we do. It's trying to get out of effort, of action, of duty, of form. We're trying to get to formlessness through formlessness, freedom through abdication, and yet this philosophy is so explicit. You get to formlessness through form. You get to liberation through deliberation. Not just being deliberate, but also surrendering. So paradoxical, and yet so experiential. You can actually experience it. Feel the truth of it when you try it out. So what do we do with this knowledge? Well, it takes immense self-inquiry to figure out, what are you wired for? What is that role that you are just naturally wired for? Once you realize that, it still feels like a cave you don't want to enter. You just feel like, I know it's there and maybe I should go in, but I don't want to enter. The next step is to surrender to that wiring. Surrender to that duty-bound existence. And what happens on the other side of that? The application of your wiring to a role that the world, either loudly or subtly, is telling you they need this from you. An abdication of desire and a surrender into duty. What is on the other side of that? It's an immediate peace. As Joseph Campbell famously said, the treasure you seek is in the cave you least want to enter. When you enter that cave, surrender to that duty-bound existence, the peace you've been chasing your whole life. It envelops you. So, feeling lost? Just reverse engineer that. Maybe there hasn't been a self-inquiry on what it is you want for yourself. The central tension of so many of our lives are, we want something for ourselves that is in opposition to what others around us want for us. The central tension of so many of our lives is what we want versus what others around us that we care for want of us. It doesn't need to be a quantum leap to break from what others want of you. It actually should feel quite natural. And I want to underscore that. It should feel quite natural. It shouldn't feel unnatural. So you don't need to make some extreme quantum leap. You can actually make incremental progress towards discovering, okay, what am I wired for? That's what education is supposed to be. To educate is not to pour in knowledge. The root of the word education is to draw out. So if you didn't get that in your conventional 21st century education or 20th century education, you're probably par for the course. Not many education systems are built around drawing out your essential nature. But you can do it on your own through continual reflection on what you are wired for. What is your essential nature? What is the thing that you would do that you love so much that you would do it if this came from one of the folks that comes to the Venice Vedantic Club. He articulated this is beautiful. That one of the ways to discover your Swadharma, one of the ways that's said often is just imagine money was in no way it was an obstacle. It was not an obstacle in your life at all. You took the amount that you wanted in your bank account to allow you to do whatever you want, double it, and then what would you do with your time? Another articulation, shout out to Prague from Venice Vedantic Club, said, you can think about it in another way of what is the thing that you would do if the only reward was that you got to do more of it? So what is that thing that you would do where you do it if the only reward is you got to do more of it? And you start to chip away incrementally at what that could be. Then you start to see, is that even true? Or am I fooling myself? And like I said, education takes many years. It could take a few years to discover this. And if you don't do this, you will feel lost. If you shut that part of your inquiry down and you just go along with, well, this is what pays the bills. This is what makes my mom and dad happy. This is what will get me these symbols of things that I want. Big house, which symbolizes stability. A spouse, which symbolizes belonging. But a big house has never given anyone that much stability. A spouse rarely sustainably makes you feel like, all right, you're good. You belong now. You will feel lost if you never do this inquiry. It is inevitable. It's a law. You will feel lost if that self-inquiry is not there. But equally, even if you figure that out, you stand right outside the cave of a duty-bound existence, a surrendering, you will feel lost there as well. What is feeling lost? It is mental agitation. What is feeling found? It is peace, a cessation of that agitation. And that peace is found through understanding your essential nature, understanding nature itself, and the meeting point between the two. That is today's reflection on the daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.